As tensions intensify, attention turns to Tehran's military response and how far this conflict could spread. Iran's military has already lashed out, firing missiles targeting ships and countries across the Middle East in retaliation. Iran's foreign minister, who led his country's negotiating team prior to the strikes, said, quote, "Nothing has changed in Iran's military capability." Retired U.S. Navy Vice Admiral Robert Murrett joins me now. He's with Syracuse University's Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs Institute for Security Policy and Law. Good afternoon, Admiral. I want to get your sense, and it's still early, based on these first 24 to 48 hours, of your assessment of Iran's military posture and the current risk of further retaliation.
Well, there's certainly a great question, Errol. There's certainly more potential of retaliation. Having said that, their military capabilities overall, which were already somewhat degraded just based upon attacks that have taken place in the last several months, have been degraded even further. And I think the things that have been gone after in terms of military associated targets are illustrative, specifically their ballistic and long-range missile capabilities. And also their naval capabilities. You heard the president making statements today about some attacks we've had on their naval assets, and because they were being used to try to take actions in the Straits of Hormuz. So the capability is still there, although it's been degraded fairly substantially, and not just in the last 24 hours, but also for some degree before then.
And what is your sense on the long-term change this could create? Iran's regional strategy has not been only the use of its own Quds force, but proxies in many other states in what some people describe as a Shia crescent, as they have influence in the region. What happens to that?
Well, the proxies are still a factor, although they're substantially weakened, whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas or the Houthis down in Yemen, or some of the other proxies they've got in countries like Iraq. But I think the real answer to your question, Errol, is the fact that Iran is taking some significant risk in terms of the retaliatory attacks that they've been conducting over the last several hours. I put those into two categories. There are the countries that have been involved or been used for U.S. basing in the region. That includes Qatar, Bahrain, and Jordan, and of course the Israelis in a special category of their own. But what's kind of surprised me a little bit is the fact that the Iranians have decided to target the Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Oman most recently, and also Iraq, Kurdistan, so to speak, where there's U.S. basing. So they tried to expand the conflict and attack some of the countries that made it clear from the start that they weren't going to participate in the attacks on Iran.
In our last minute, then, I'm curious to know, what is the biggest question on your mind as we look to gauge, what's important to focus on in these early days?
Yeah, Errol, I think the big question is the scope and the duration of the conflict. It's already expanded just a little bit in the last 24 hours, although the fact that the president has said he plans to talk to the new so-called Leadership Council, members of the Leadership Council in Iran, the leadership, that might be illustrative. But we still don't know the scope and the duration, how long this is going to take. There have been estimates we've heard from different members of Congress and people in the administration, but none of those are probably accurate at this point. And the scope, and whether or not it's going to be expanded further to some of the countries that I mentioned earlier, which are surprisingly been drawn into the conflict.
All right, we'll keep watching all of that closely. Vice Admiral Robert Murrett, thank you very much for your time today.
Best wishes, Errol.